Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Tennant Nicholson, the president of Henderson County Beekeepers Association in beautiful Western North Carolina. I had the privilege of being at the state conference just a few weeks ago, and I met at lunchtime some really beautiful researchers that were on stage with Dr. Tarpey. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be great to get the PowerPoints that they're presenting at lunch actually on YouTube via PowerPoint presentation. So that's why we're here. So this is part of a playlist where you can see all the presenters from the North Carolina State Beekeepers Association Summer Conference. This is one of the presentations that we saw at lunchtime along with the BeeMORE program that Dr. Tarpey was presenting. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Maya. Maya, you have a mouthful of a last name, so tell us how you say your last name and then tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Maya Szymborski. I'm going to be a senior this year at Appalachian State University up in Boone.
Oh, not too far from me. Just a few
Yeah, not
hours.
too
Yeah.
far.
Keep going. And then tell us what you're studying and how you came to
Yeah,
find out about Be More.
yeah. So I'm a double major here. I study biology, but then I also study East Asian studies with my concentration in Japanese. Um, so yeah, two things that are not really correlating, but hopefully one day I can make them correlate.
Yeah.
And then I heard about this program just because I was someone who has never done research before. I only got into biology pretty recently. And so I saw this opportunity and I was like, well, this is perfect. I like insects, I like bees, and this will be a research thing. So I was like pretty stoked to be able to be a part of this program.
And had you been a beekeeper before? Like, what experience had you had working with bees prior to this?
I actually had no experience with bees before this. I had started joining our school's beekeeping club. Um,
Nice.
so I went to a few meetings and I learned some basic beekeeping things, but other than that, I literally knew nothing about bees or anything like that.
Well, show us what you learned this summer. We would love to kind of see what your research
Yeah,
was all about and what you learned and what your research taught you.
yeah. So I will get my presentation up here. Um, so yeah, so this summer I was studying the impact of sunflower pollen on parasite transmission in bumblebees and solitary bees. My mentor was April Sharp. She's a PhD student who is doing this main research, and I was kind of there to help her, but also kind of do my own little side project. And then the overall faculty mentor was Dr. Rebecca Irwin, who's pretty famous for doing work on bumblebees and specifically bumblebee parasites. Um, so the parasite what I was studying is called Crithidia bombi, and it's a gut parasite in bumblebees that kind of inhibits their survival abilities. So it makes them really lazy and lethargic, so they don't go out and forage, they don't go and reproduce. Just kind of eventually just kills them off. And the way that it gets transmitted is fecal orally. So when one bumblebee poops, because it's fecal matter out, another bumblebee, say it's on some kind of flower, and the bee poops when it's there, and another bee comes along, gets in that poop, then it gets infected with this parasite. But there's research has shown that sunflower pollen is able to reduce Crithidia bombi infections in individual bees by increasing their defecation. Well, we think it's by increasing their defecation, but the problem with increasing defecation is even if it's lowering individual parasite loads in a bumblebee, if it's increasing their amount of fecal matter, then does that mean the bumblebee is transmitting that parasite more to other bees?
Right.
Um,
Now it's
so
interesting to
yeah,
me. Let me just ask a question here because as a beekeeper, I can see the bees going out and then they defecate outside the hives. They're not necessarily defecating on a flower or in the hive itself. It's more like in the air. So do
yeah.
bumblebees, is it normal for them to defecate on a flower? Like how is What's the
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure like how normally they defecate, but I do know that the research that Irwin Lab is doing is Cryptidia bombi on the sunflowers,
gotcha?
but also in their food. So one part of the lab, the part of the lab I was not part of, was testing their survival rate, how long they can stay on different flowers.
Okay.
And then for my part of the lab, we already have hives that we infect bees with, and then we put them in the hives and we see how that infection goes when they're pooping in their hive together.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so part of this was I was doing two different kinds of bees. So we know that Bombus impatiens is the main bee that Cryptidia bombi infects, but we also know there's a few other types of bees that it can infect. And one of them is the solitary leafcutter bee called Megachile rotundata. And those are the two bees that I was working with this summer. So what we did is we took two different pollen diets and we were trying to see how this affects the transmission rate. So first, we would take a standardized dose of parasite cells, and we would infect the bumblebees with them, and then we'd let the bumblebees sit for about 7 days to let them get to peak infection. And then those infected bees, we would either give them sunflower pollen, which is our experimental, or buckwheat pollen, which was our control, and let them see like we had them for 1 day, the different diets. And then we would put them in these little, we called roommate groups with other bees. So we'd either put them with two other bumblebees or we'd put the infected bee with two other megachile. And they'd be roommates for about 24 hours. And then we would take the infected bee out and separate the bees, and the bees that were now exposed, they would get about 7 days for them to also reach peak infection. But the infected bees, and then after the other bees, we'd take them, we'd dissect them, and then we'd look at how many parasites we could see in a certain area on using I think the word was hematometer. Yeah, we'd use those to count how many parasite cells we could see.
Neat. Okay.
Yeah, and then our results, well, the trials are still going, but so far, sunflower pollen doesn't seem to increase transmission, which is really good. So even though it's not decreasing transmission, at least it's not increasing, which is the important thing. And the overall, I think planting more sunflowers could be beneficial to bumblebees and like preventing more Cryptidia. But also, there's other kinds of bees that can be infected, which includes another person in my lab, a different part of my lab, was testing what kind of bees can be infected by Cryptidia. And she found that I forgot which type of honeybee can be, but there is a honeybee that can. So I
Okay.
think just beekeepers too, it'd be important to help plant more sunflowers around that could decrease the amount of Cryptidia that are infecting.
So do you think that but what if I wanted to do buckwheat instead of the sunflower? Do you have an opinion about between buckwheat and sunflower?
So we know as buckwheat as our control, we know that if a bee is, well, specifically a bumblebee already has Cryptidia, that if they have buckwheat pollen and they poop, then that is going to increase transmission. So
Oh,
you can use buckwheat, but sunflower has like previous research has shown that sunflower is able to decrease um the Cryptidia counts on an individual basis.
so your recommendation would be plant more sunflowers and focus on the sunflowers versus the buckwheat. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Interesting. Okay. What else did you find out?
So that was like our main finding. The research is still going on right now. My mentor April is still doing this research and she'll be having more findings. These were just the findings that I found on my own. And the same was for Megachile, where if a Megachile got in contact with a bumblebee that was infected, it was less likely the transmission was less likely to happen if they had sunflower.
Wow. Okay. And then how can people reach you?
Yeah, so here are my contacts. That's my email, and then my mentor, April Sharp, she knows a lot more about this than I do. You can also contact her through her email and then through our LinkedIn's as well.
Well, and then what would you overall, with the just looking back at the whole summer, how is this going to impact what you're doing next, and what can we expect from you next?
Yeah, so I was really, like I said earlier, I was really excited to go into this because unlike a lot of the other BeeMORE participants, I was someone who has never had research experience before. So I didn't really know what it was like. And so this experience was very transformative and pivotal to helping me understand what it's like. And if I decide to go into research into the future, I would have this knowledge under my belt. I'm still undecided if I'm gonna go into research or not. Maybe do a few more research experiences to decide, but I have found that I do enjoy working in the lab and I did enjoy working with the bees, definitely.
Do you think you might become a beekeeper in the future? You've been to a few of the bee club meetings.
Yeah, so part of this program is we also got to experience a few beekeeping things. So we got to do some beekeeping, some honey harvesting and whatnot, and that was definitely a lot of fun. I don't know if I would do it. Maybe when I'm older and I have a lot more time to be able to do it. Like
Right, right.
yeah, because right now I definitely do not have the time or resources to do it. But I would if I could help bees in any way. I think if I move into an apartment or something, I'll definitely start planning like a little pollinator garden just to help out with the local pollinators.
Oh, that's a great idea. So yeah, I highly recommend that for everybody. And hey, if you're near a bee club, remember that sometimes the bee clubs have apiaries where you don't
Yeah.
have to have land and your own apiary. You can just
Yeah.
volunteer at their apiary and still keep bees that way and get and develop your skill set. We have that here in Henderson County, and I know a lot of other clubs across the state for sure have apiaries that they maintain on a
Hmm.
volunteer basis. There's also Veterans Healing Farm that definitely need extra hands and so forth. So thanks so much, Maya, for being with us
Yeah.
today and representing your PowerPoint. It's really wonderful. And congratulations on a great summer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.